Ah, playing Kalista. Don't you love it when you come out of lane 4 kills ahead, maybe like 1,000 gold, you have a bunch of CS, you got all the platings, all that good stuff. The rest of your team is even. You can't end the game within 30 minutes, so you have to play for late game, and you are doing less damage than your enemy ADC even though you're 2 items up. What's the big deal? Oh, she falls off super fast. What's the issue? Well, there are 2 builds you can do for auto attack based marksmen. You can either build crit. Stuff like Kraken Slayer, PD, Infinity Edge is a very common build path for a lot of champions. Or you can go for on hit, which is pretty much always Shield Bow, Rage Blade, and some other on hit stuff. Rune's is very common. And that's what Kalista does. She usually goes on hit. Now, why do these both suck on Kalista? Well, let's go over crit first. Because her auto attacks do 90% of her AD as damage, she sucks late game because her crits only do like, I don't know, like 1.6 times of her regular auto instead of 1.75 like a regular champion. And even with Infinity Edge, it's still kind of garbage, so crit kind of sucks. On hit, well, the issue is she doesn't benefit that much from attack speed in the late game. Once you get past like 2 attack speed, every little point of attack speed you get kind of just becomes useless because of how the Riot programmed the game for Kalista. Could you imagine if she was hopping the same distance at 3 attacks per second? She'd be faster than Zeri, and Zeri's in the game. But that's totally fine, right? Zeri going like 500 movement speed within 2 seconds of ulting, that's totally fine. 600, totally fine, yeah. So, crit and on-hit both suck. So, what's the solution? You go towards the most expensive items, which aren't crit marksman items, which is bruiser. Build stuff like Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra, Sterak's Gauge, I don't know, whatever the hell you want. And that's the idea of this build. Now, I am not the creator of this build. I did help in finding the build because of a bug I discovered, and that somewhat helps, but that's not the big deal. The good thing about this build is it's actually good in the late game because it gives you a lot of damage, it gives you a lot of sustain, and it's just better than on-hit and crit if you ask me. So, what is the solution to items? Well, first of all, you just go for your regular start. Shield Bow, Rune's Hurricane, very standard. And then after that is where things get interesting. This is where you choose to build a Black Cleaver or a Titanic Hydra. Why? Well, they're really good on Kalista because she does all physical damage, really. Your W doesn't count, by the way. Her damage is all physical, so Black Cleaver is really good. Since you have Rune's Hurricane, Titanic Hydra is also pretty good because Titanic Hydra also gives you AD based on HP. Overall, they're both very good items. You do waste some stats on Black Cleaver. The movement speed is kind of worthless, and the ability haste goes slightly unused, but that's totally fine. So, you'll pretty much always build both of these items in one way or another. Doesn't matter which one you build first. And it's just really good. And the bug here is if you build a Rune's Hurricane and then you build a Black Cleaver on any ranged champion, every single one of your attacks will proc Black Cleaver twice. I'm not sure why the spaghetti code happens, but this is Riot Games we're talking about. That totally makes sense. So you build your usual Shield Bow, Rune's Hurricane, Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra. You have 1 item slot left, even including boots. This is where you can fit in something like, I don't know, a Spirit's Visage. It's very common because you lack MR. And the Shield Bow shielding goes up. Your healing from Shield Bow goes up. It's just a pretty good item. You can build something like Edge of Night, Force of Nature, Thornmail, Randuin's. If you don't have a Shield Bow, if you have something like a Kraken Slayer or like a Triforce, you can build a Sterak's Gauge even, or a Maw of Malmortius. There's a lot of options for your last item. But generally, the best option, if there's no big threat, is either Spirit's Visage or Edge of Night. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. And now to go over runes. This is where I don't really like it because I don't like the new Lethal Tempo. I think the new Lethal Tempo isn't that great. But for this build specifically, Lethal Tempo is incredible. I prefer Halo Blade since it came out and I've been using Halo Blade since, but I can't make this build work with Halo Blade, so go Lethal Tempo. So the rune set will be Lethal Tempo, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Last Stand, trust me on this, I'll explain why, And then you go Resolve Secondary with Conditioning and Overgrowth with your usual attack speed, Adaptive Force Armor for your flat runes. So Lethal Tempo is pretty good because it gives you some early attack speed, which you could use to do some long trades, but that shouldn't be your main goal since you do scale in the late game. Triumph because you're going to have a bunch of HP, you're going to be healing up a bunch, it's all pretty good. Alacrity because that's literally the best rune. Bloodline takes too long to stack and it's just not worth it. Tenacity, you could do it in some situations if they have a lot of crowd control, but Legend Alacrity is kind of just a no-brainer. Cut Down. I don't know why people are sleeping on this rune. This is incredible. I can guarantee you're going to be doing more damage with Cut Down than Coup de Grace because it's just a lot easier to work with it. I don't know. The thing about Kalista is in the late game, once your E starts doing a bunch of damage, you're going to kill enemies with your E before they even go under 40% health. So your Coup de Grace is pretty much only just an early game rune. So yeah, it is what it is. And yeah, and then you go Resolve Secondary, you go Conditioning because it's just better for late game. If you want, you could go Second Wind or Bone Plating depending on your laner. If you're facing an all-lane heavy lane, you can go Bone Plating. Otherwise, you can go Second Wind because, you know, maybe they have a lot of poke, something like Brand Senna. But you pretty much always go Overgrowth. If your team has like, I don't know, a Soraka or something, then you could go Revitalize. Or if they have a lot of crowd control, if you don't want to go Tenacity, you could go for Unflinching. And yeah, that's pretty much it for your runes. Now let's get into the playstyle. So, playing Kalista with this build in the early game is pretty similar to regular Kalista. You just farm, you have pretty good early damage, so you can do good trades in the early game. For your maxing, for your ability maxing, I hate putting points into W. There are multiple reasons for this. One, it's just a bad ability. The W active sucks. The passive damage is good, but the issue is if I have it active and my support's helping me shove waves, I miss out on so many minions because the damage is so awkward. And if you put a point into your W, you'll only have 3 points in your Q by level 10. And the good thing about Kalista Q is once you have 4 points in your Q and you have a some AD, you can start one-shotting caster minions. So that helps you with a lot of wave clear. So if you put points into W, you'll have 3, 1, 5, 2. Sorry, 3, 1, 5, 1 for your abilities. If you don't put a point to your W, it's 4, 0, 5, 1. You see? That's pretty much just how I prefer it. And for your items in the early game, I usually go Doran's Blade Health Pot. I have been finding a lot of success with Longsword Triple Health Pot. What I usually do is assess my support. If my support can heal or shield me, I'll usually go Doran's Blade because I don't need that much sustain because the Doran's Blade Omnivamp is better in the late game if you keep it. But if your laner is something like a very aggressive all-in champion like Nautilus or I don't know, Thresh, Leona, Blitzcrank, you should go Longsword Triple Health Pot just so you can play really aggressive early on, tank minions, and just be able to force your laner out of your lane so you can start getting a bunch of money. Sometimes you could go Longsword Refill, where they have a lot of poke and your support can't really go in the early game. But I don't usually do that. I usually just go Longsword, Triple Health Pot, or Doran's Blade Health Pot. I do not go Doran's Shield. I used to do this before for poke lanes, but Doran's Shield just sucks. Longsword Triple Health Pot is just a lot better. You'll build like usual, you know, Noon Quiver, Berserker Greaves for your first back ideally. Try to finish your shield bow by your third back, I'd say. Start working on the Rune's Hurricane, you know, just the usual. And then by the time you reach shield bow Rune's Berserker's Graves, you'll be pretty strong. You'll be able to team fight very well. But maybe there's a lot of armor stacking on the enemy team. Just build a Black Cleaver. You might say LDR is better. Honestly, Black Cleaver is actually pretty good. I'm surprised people are sleeping on it. And it's getting a buff very soon in the bruiser item buff changes. So yeah, you get some more HP, you get a similar amount of AD. I think you get the exact same AD as Lord Dominic's Regard. You get some ability haste on top of that, and you're giving AoE armor shred, not just for yourself, so it helps your team. And if you don't have a lot of tankiness, just go Titanic Hydra, but whatever you go, third item, you build the other one fourth. So if you go Black Cleaver first, you go Hydra. If you go Hydra first, you go Black Cleaver. It's just a very good 4-item combo. Your late game damage is extremely high. If you have Overgrowth at like I don't know, 200-ish stacks, and you have 4 items, you're gonna have like over 3,000 of like almost 3,000 HP. I'm pretty sure you're gonna get like 50 AD from Titanic Hydra altogether, and then the on-hit effect as well. It's just incredible. And yeah, a funny thing about this build, you actually get more AD with this build than a traditional Kalista build. Like if you have Overgrowth activated and you have Shield Barunan's Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra, Edge of Night, you'll almost have 400 AD if you have an Elixir of Wrath as well. If you're doing like a regular Kalista build like Shield Barunan's Rageblade, Bloodthirster, Lord Dominic's Regard, you'll actually have less AD. You have the on-hit effect, but like, you're not that strong in the late game. All that attack speed you're getting is kind of worthless. That lifesteal isn't that great because Riot hates lifesteal and they're adding a bunch of grievous wounds for no reason. Actually, I'm glad they are, but like still, you know what I mean. So, yeah. I just think this new build is incredible. I should say this is made by Derek Hiker on the Kalista main server. Incredible guy. I helped him find the Kalista bug for Rune's Black Cleaver, but he made the build. I just never thought it would work. But huzzah, I tried it a few times in ranked. I don't think I've done so good so consistently. So yeah, I hope you guys have fun with this build. This is just a guide for this build. If you want a guide for Kalista overall, I have one on my channel like 2 years ago when I was kind of stupid. But it's still a good guide regardless. So yeah, have fun in your climb. See ya.